Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode. So, I am coming to you by myself for the intro of the YouTube video, just to let you know that we did have a couple of technical difficulties with my video in particular. My audio is here for the full episode, but it doesn't quite sync up with my face the whole time, so I'm sorry if that distracts you a little bit. This is maybe focus on Callie and our lovely guest MC from That's What I'm Talking About for this one, because you're not gonna see me after about 15 minutes in anyway. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and we will see you very soon. Welcome to another episode of Tolkien with Friends, where I, Andy, try to get over my feelings about the Hobbit movies and try to enjoy them. Helping me on this journey today is, of course, my lovely co-host Callie Cosplay, and we are also so excited to be joined by Mary Clay Watt, the wonderful host of That's What I'm Talking About. Welcome, MC. I'm so glad you're here.
Woo! Yay!
Woo-hoo!
Air horn noises. I love that intro of like where I am trying to not hate The Hobbit.
That was a rousing battle cry, wasn't it?
That honestly, that should have been my introduction for when I was doing the Silmarillion.
Yeah.
It's just where I tried to not hate this.
Where I am trying to get over myself a little bit. But that's okay. That's all right. We're having a good time doing it, right? MC, I don't know about the film, but I low-key don't know if I will ever really talk about the film the way that
you don't need to. That's what I've just decided. Don't tell New Beta, but I just decided that no one ever needs to read the Silmarillion unless you hate yourself. If you like really hate yourself, then go for it.
There's just so many things. You know what I mean? Like, there's parts of it that I really enjoy, but like, I don't know. It's hard to remember all those names and stuff when I don't like. I don't have an emotional connection to it in the same way.
Yeah, that's also a good point.
I've read it enough times that I would say that I do. So
that's
I
good.
am one of those people who enjoys it a lot. But
so you hate yourself. Okay, good to know.
That must be it. Yeah. Yes. We're having... I think I did admit as much when I was on your podcast. I was like, I read it, and then I was just like, let's go do it again.
Nice. I'll pull back the internet persona for a minute, and say that like whatever you enjoy it, unapologetically. There's absolutely there's no problem with people who really enjoyed the Silmarillion. There's no problem with people who are like, the Hobbit movies are the best piece of cinema I've ever seen in my life. There's nothing wrong with any of these completely wrong opinion. No, I'm just kidding. But like, I mean, in all seriousness, like, I have no problem with people being, excited about the things that excites them. Yeah. That being said, the Silmarillion ain't for me.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. And there's so much of it where like for me, like, I tried to read it multiple times. I would get through the Aindilindalle, the music of the Ainur.
Yeah,
that. And I was like, okay, that's kind of fun. That's kind of neat. And then it's like, list of names. And I'm like, no.
And they all have like secret, they all have like different special powers. And I'm like, I don't know. I've lost track. I've already forgotten.
Yeah, I'm like, because he introduces them and then he tells you a story about them. And I'm like, flip it around, my guy. Because I don't care until they have a part to play in this, Like, I can't just like you for the sake of liking you. I can't. But that's all right.
Which is why it was kind of fun for me to come to like do it's that TikTok sound, do a wraparound. Like, I've come all the way back now to
Josh
The Hobbit.
Been saying that to me all weekend. That's so wild.
Oh man.
But yeah, we're coming full circle. So, like, MC, I know you've had your own journey with The Hobbit and Lord
oh
of the
boy,
Rings.
have I, right?
Yes, like a publicly documented journey for the ages. And so one thing that we're doing for this one, just because all of our guests have come to for some people, The Hobbit was like
their intro to Middle Earth, book or movie wise, and we've all had kind of it come to it at different points, right? Where and we just have different feelings about it. So I was just gonna ask, like, could you tell us more about how The Hobbit entered your life and like your general feelings about the book and the movies?
Sure. Yeah. For those that don't know, on my podcast, it's documenting my first experience through Lord of the Rings and Tolkien, having never I take that back. I had seen Fellowship of the Ring once, and I had like already forgotten so much of it. Like I thought Boromir and Aragorn were one character. And and so like that was the extent of my knowledge. And so I started with The Lord of the Rings because I thought that came first. And then later, the publishers were like, hey, Jolkin, it seems people really like your stuff. Do you have a prequel in you or another story? And then he wrote The Hobbit is what I thought happened. Because that's how the order of the movies came out. You know, they did Lord of the Rings first and then then The Hobbit. So that's why I started. I had a lot of people ask me like, why did you start with Lord of the Rings and not The Hobbit? And I said, I thought that's how it came out and the books were published. So once I had finished Lord of the Rings, I started reading chapter by chapter The Hobbit, and then I covered the movies for a while, I feel like.
Too long. Perchance.
Yeah. So we were talking before we officially started the episode about how I think when you're in the middle of it, when you're covering it on a podcast, especially like for multiple weeks or months, you're going to be more likely to hate it because you're going to be like, I want to stop talking about this. Like I don't like my enthusiasm for this has reached its peak like a couple weeks ago, but I still have to finish the story, you know?
Yeah. I think what's getting me personally through is our lovely guest and Callie. You know what I mean? Like we're just hanging out, and then
it's about the people, right? Yeah.
And then we throw that into the mix.
Yeah, I think that's totally, because I think I also felt the same when I was getting towards like the end of it, but I still had like multiple episodes to go, being like, I just want to stop watching these movies. These are so terrible. But now that it's been I think it's been well over a year since I've seen a Hobbit movie like in its full, you know?
Yeah.
And so like with that distance, I'm like, yeah, they were fine. Like they weren't great, but like it's a fine movie experience to be like, hey, friends, come over. We're going to have like a nerdy movie night and we're going to watch a Hobbit movie. Like, there's no problem with that.
Yes. Agree. Yeah, it is. So like with Lord of the Rings, so we did that one first too, mainly because I like it more.
Yeah, that's fair.
And like I do love the Hobbit book. I think it is so precious and whimsical and adorable and fun. And then the Hobbit movies came along, and I think that it's also wrapped up in like my expectations at the time of when they were coming out and everything. Like I was so ready. I was so pumped. I was like, yay, more Peter and Middle Earth, you know. And then I was like, oh, wait, it's just the whole time. Like, why did you do this? What? I just want to be like, sir, can I have a moment of your time, Peter? Just talk me through some of this.
Yeah.
Because it's not.
And, you know, I kind of had that expectation going into the movies, whereas I know when they were coming out, it was kind of, you know, people going into the theaters being like, all right, more Peter Jackson, Tolkien movies. This is going to be as amazing, you know, the first time around. And so knowing the fandom reception going into it, I think really lowered my expectations too. And I was like, I'm just going to take it as, you know, what it is.
Right.
But I think it's just a really sad thing about like capitalism that they took this, like The Hobbit is, I would say, of like Tolkien's works, I think I would say The Hobbit is my favorite
because
it's just so a nice
fun.
Story to read, you know?
It's nice.
And they took this, 250-page book and were like, we're going to make it 9 hours long. The audiobook is 10 hours long. Like that, like you don't need to do that. And they did it for capitalism reasons. And it turned out so bad if they had just put effort into making this like a cohesive story in one movie.
Yeah.
I think it would have ended up a lot better, and it didn't.
Yeah, I think that there was like good intentions, like with including the White Council stuff and Sauron, but then it was like, what I'm seeing is that they're just struggling, the dissonance between having a fun romp versus like a serious prequel to Lord of the Rings, and they are not meshing. You know what I mean? They needed to like pick a lane and they couldn't, you know? Like we've got naked dwarves and fountains, and then we've got like serious like Sauron bits in Dol Guldur. Like it's just like,
and also like the Sauron bits I don't think you care about as a viewer, because you know that this, whatever story they're telling in the Hobbit movies with Sauron, you know that's not the end of it. You know that there's more to come. So why are we going to care about this battle and this plot when we know that like Gandalf's not going to die?
Yeah.
You know, Galadriel's not going to die or whatever. You know, like we know how it turns out, so we don't care about what we're watching.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, because and we see in this chapter as well when Gandalf is like, I gotta go. I got business in the south. Bye. And I mean, it's like there's like nods to what he's up to with that, and it's like I think they could have incorporated, you know what I mean, like little hints, but without just going full Sauron plotline.
Speaking of that, so Tolkien wrote The Hobbit first, right? Yeah. When he was writing this, do you think when he's writing these parts about Gandalf being like, yeah, I got, other business to attend to. Oh, did you guys think this was my main quest? No, you guys are a side quest for me. This was just like a fun little way for me to spend time. When Tolkien was writing this, do you think he was writing it being like, yeah, and then he goes off and tries to talk with the White Council about Sauron? Or do you think he was like, nah, Gandalf just fucks off because that's who Gandalf is?
Yeah, I think OG version of Gandalf, he's just, because especially when you look at who Gandalf is, because I know they didn't like totally rewrite this. They like tweaked things to make it fit better,
there was
right? But like
editing after the fact, after Lord of the Rings.
But like with most of Gandalf's stuff, like he is here for a silly goose time. Like for real. You know what I mean? Like
and that's why I love The Hobbit particularly, because the chaotic Gandalf vibes are just immaculate. And like this chapter particularly, when he's like showing up and talking to Beorn, and then he's just like slowly these like dwarves are trickling in, and he's like, oh, did I say I had 5 friends? No, I had 7. Oh, did I say 7? I meant 12.
He's like, well, at first it's like, out of courtesy to Beorn, like, oh yeah, like I didn't want to bother you, Then he's like, I mean, it's so smart and funny, and on top of like Gandalf and Beorn just peace out the second day. Like nobody can see them, so they're just like hanging out with the animals. And then Gandalf comes back and he's like, I don't want to talk until after I've eaten. They're like, okay. He's like, I don't want to talk yet until after I've like blown all my multicolored smoke rings around the room.
Yes!
Like he's, you know what I mean? Like he's like, yeah,
I love it.
I'm in a hurry to get to my business in the south, but I also like definitely have time to
it's infuriating
around.
Like
I love
if
him.
You were a dwarf or if you were Bilbo, but like as a reader it's hilarious.
I love him. I love him so much, and I think that that's one thing that I with the Hobbit book, because that was the first one that I had read, and I was really just reading all of these to like be the person that could say I read them before I watched the movies, right? Like very 11-year-old me. That's so me. And then, but with the introducing yourself to the Hobbit first, I think it gives this whole other side of Middle Earth that is nowhere. And I understand that it's like in the Tolkien's like writing of everything, it wasn't necessarily Middle Earth isn't necessarily supposed to be a silly goose time, but I love that canonically it is, right? Like, we have to accept that this is true of also the Middle Earth that ends with the Silmarillion, you know what I mean? So, and like the just goofiness and like the way that the elves just are a little like cheekier and like they're funny and they like to sing and they're just like down for a good time while also having like, they also deal with serious stuff, but they're not like just gonna like dump that all on you, you know what I mean? Like, you're a guest, you're here to have a good time, and they understand that, you know? And same with Gandalf, like, he isn't going to be like, well, Bilbo, I'm actually in a fight against Sauron by trying to get rid of this dragon, you know what I mean? He's just like, Bilbo, you'll love it, just go.
He's like, you know what, don't worry your pretty little head about what I'm doing, don't you worry. I promise it doesn't matter.
It's fine, it's all good, enjoy, stay on the path. But then also, like, when he's leaving at the end of this chapter, it's very much like, he's like, maybe I'll see you again, maybe I won't, I don't know.
Yeah, the vibes of this chapter are just so
love it.
Insane, because on one hand it's like, oh my god, they're in this cute little cottage, there's all these like bees and there's honey and there are these animals that's also slightly creepy, that like there's these animals just like walking around hanging out with them. And then on the other hand, every time Beorn talks, he's like, yeah, watch where you go because you might get killed immediately. Or like and then in Mirkwood, the amount of times that Gandalf is like, yeah, you might die, have fun. And it's like, what's happening?
And they're like, and I love that like Thorin is like, yeah, okay, very helpful, like, get out, like, if you're not coming, just like leave me alone. You know what I mean? Like, I truly love this chapter and therefore have a hard time with the movie.
Oh, so this is where I get to tell you, unless you already know, in which case ignore all this, but in the episode that I was doing for like the first section of Desolation of Smaug, I had intended for it to just be like, it was like one episode on about 45 minutes of the movie. And my guest and I accidentally talked about how mad we were about all the Beorn stuff being cut, that I had to break this episode up into 2 parts, and we talked about like the first like 5 to 10 minutes of the movie for like an hour.
I get it, because legitimately when I was trying not to make my notes too long, you know what I mean? I'm like, it's really like 30 minutes of the movie, like they plunge into Mirkwood and I just stopped it, you know, because that's where the chapter ends. And I was like, but I was so hung up on the opening of the film that like that took up like 2 pages, you know? And I was just like, oh.
Tell us more, Andy, tell us more.
So
please.
So, all right. So, when we last saw Bilbo, Gandalf, and crew in the movie, they had just been dropped off at the Carrack. They kind of skip over the Eyrie bit, which I get, that's fine. If we're not going to have talking eagles anyway, then don't let them go to their house, fine. So they're on the Carrack, which, as we learn in the book, is a great stone hill that is kind of like plopped in the middle of this river. And what I thought was cute, though, is that in the book, of the copy of my Hobbit, at the back it calls it the Great River of Wilderland or whatever, however you want to say that. But it's the Anduin, which I was like,
oh, okay.
She's got a cute nickname.
I mean, it wouldn't be Tolkien if it didn't have a nickname, you know?
Yeah. True. So that is where, and it's like much farther north than anywhere we've been on this side of the Misty Mountains previously, and it's that's where this chapter, Queer Lodgings, starts. You know, as the Eagles in the book take our group, you know, to the Carrack, and then they leave, and then they make their way down. However, The Desolation of Smaug, the movie, starts by not picking up where we left off, but by going back to the moment where Thorin and Gandalf first meet in Bree.
Right. Yes.
Yes. So and while I love that they included this moment from the appendices, I think it's a very cool piece of dialogue between these two. They do it so dirty. It's so wrong. And
interesting. Speak more to that, because I feel like for a movie and for like the appendices just being, and I've just recently read this section.
Yeah.
Where it came across to me where they just kind of like meet in, you know, the prancing pony or whatever, and they're like, oh, you have a problem, I have a problem. What a coincidence.
Right. I mean, and that's kind of how it goes down, because in the book, it's really like Gandalf is on his way to the Shire after doing whatever the hell else Gandalf was up to, and Thorin also was coming back on his way to the Blue Mountains. They both stopped there because where else are you going to stop? And run into each other. And it's Thorin that goes up to Gandalf and is like, you know, I've been meaning to talk to you, but I just didn't know how to find you, so this is cool. And Gandalf is like, well, actually, I was just thinking about your business as well, you know, because of Gandalf at this point is very concerned about so he at this point already, and we talked about this previously, Callie, I think when we went through the whole timeline of like what the White Council has been up to throughout this history or this age of Middle Earth. And so Gandalf already fully is aware that it's Sauron, right? And he's like, okay, this guy is set to attack Rivendell as soon as he can. The only people over there that could really help are the dwarves, but they've got a dragon in their way. So I'm like, he's like grappling with what do I do with that? And then Thorin shows up. He's like, hey, I think you also would probably not like having that dragon there. And he's like, yeah. So then they agree to figure something out together. We don't, and basically in the appendices, as you know, it just says like,
just like cuts. It's like, and more of these adventures are told elsewhere.
Yeah, he's like, you know where to find it. In the movie, I mean, it's like, sure, you've got your cute little Peter cameo, always eating that fucking carrot.
And, right.
And Thorin arrives, and it's
also a cameo from his daughter is one of the servers in the Prancing Pony.
Oh shit!
Oh, I didn't know that.
Who's all grown up from the
That's upsetting.
when she was a child in the
that's wild. That's wild.
I think it's the server who serves Thorin.
Yeah.
It might be a different one in the background. I can't remember. But
the bread, cheese, and what has he got? 2 eggs. 2 eggs,
classic,
bread, and a slice.
I did not write that down, so I do not remember.
Food, you know, like ale, bread, and cheese.
I love it. Honestly, I would order that.
Yeah.
So they show up, and right off the bat, I hate that. I'm sorry. I hate that it's like Bree is still It's okay. So this is 60 years before Bilbo's 111th birthday, right? It's 60 years before the events of Lord of the Rings, where things are starting to creep that way towards the Shire, where evil is starting to Bree should not be this like sad, creepy place. It should just be a chill inn on the road that you stop in. And yet, Thorin's got these guys in the corner, like, staring at him all. And he's like, what do I do? And then that's when Gandalf sits down. It's not Thorin approaching Gandalf eating. It's Gandalf coming in as, like, help him out, you know? And it's like, okay, whatever. The vibes are off, but whatever. And then, of course, it's like, they cannot stop talking about how movie version of the story has Azog wanting to wipe out the line of Durin. That comes up again. I hate it.
It's all really the timeline is all over the place, because like some of this it's like this stuff does happen as Tolkien wrote it. But also like it happens, you know, on a completely different timeline. Like, you know, like Azog is killed in that, I forget what it's called, but like that battle where they try to take back Moria, you know? And so like technically like, yeah, Azog is this big baddie that the dwarves have to contend with, but it's dead. 60 years earlier than that, or whatever. So like
dead.
it's yeah, he's dead by now.
I get
but
he's in the movie, whatever. But like,
could you watch a trilogy where the main, their main like villain is Bolg?
No,
that is the name. I'm pretty sure that's the name of his son.
It
right?
is, but he doesn't even bother to show up until later. You know what I mean? Like, even if he wanted to keep it, I just like there's too much of this Azog nonsense. Like, it's too much.
It is kind of like there's, and also in the Queer Lodgings episode, doesn't like Beorn goes back and is like, yeah, I killed the Goblin King, and like that would be the equivalent of. No, that would be Azog. No, I'm getting so confused.
Yes.
keep talking.
But I mean, it's just like, why is this Azog bullshit like still a problem? Like in this flash forward, do you know what I mean? Like, there's so much of it. And I wrote in my notes. I was like, thanks, I guess, for mentioning like Thrain's ring. I think that is important to mention, but the way that they've got it, like Thrain was wearing it during that battle, and
this is so funny. I pulled out my notebook that I was using to take notes on like this chapter in the movie when I was covering it.
Yeah,
I'm writing, this is all wrong, and then I wrote in all caps, I do not care about the orcs.
Same. It's too much, like,
oh man.
And it's like whatever, okay. I mean, there's just so much happening in this scene with like what they're talking about. Not to mention that they like make up some bullshit about the Arkenstone as if this is like Thorin's Aragorn
fucking
moment.
Arkenstone. I forgot about. You're bringing up all these feelings.
I'm sorry.
That have laid dormant for.
I understand. I mean, it's like I mean, this is one of the movies. So like, we've reached a point where I haven't rewatched the second or the third Hobbit movies hardly at all. So I'm like, what are you saying? Like this whole like idea that they 7 dwarf lords like swore on this Arkenstone like to serve the king.
So dumb because it's so inconsequential in the book. It's literally like
it's just pretty
a random thing where they're
it's
like,
just nice. You know what I mean?
Jewel. That's what they want. And then in this one, I think it would have been a lot more interesting to be like, we have to find out if the like if the fifth ring, the first dwarven ring or whatever, we have to find out if it actually was destroyed or if it's still in Erebor somewhere. Like maybe like make that the thing that they're like trying to find, or that Thorin thinks he has to have.
It's just
in order
like
to be,
this whole idea that it's like. I also hate that, like, Gandalf is our Hobbit champion throughout all of these stories, right? He understands that defeating Sauron is not about big wins. You know, it's not about big kills. But in this, it's like, oh yeah, you need all these dwarf kingdoms to fight Smaug to take back Erebor, and, you know, makes it out like you've got to unite the peoples. And I'm like, that is not how dwarves are. Like, this is not how they work. Like, you're making it out like Aragorn when he's like got to unite the men of Middle Earth.
Yeah,
like,
it is kind of coming across as Gandalf trying to repeat this like Aragorn plotline, but with Thorin and for the dwarves, when it's like, no, they just kind of are like the dwarven people are just constantly depressed that all of their homes keep getting destroyed,
and like
and
the
they
whole thing with the war was that like that was when Thrain was like, yeah, we've got all of us here. I mean, half of us are dead, but we won, so we can go take back Moria. And all of them were like, pause, Chief. That's not what we're about. Okay.
Not a good idea.
I'm real tired.
Not the goal here.
Yeah. This was like a revenge thing. We're not like really invested in Moria anymore. We're gonna earn a peace. And then everyone's like, oh, all right. You know, that's how they go. And it's, you know, they had to like kind of assess their losses at that point. You know, like they won, but they still had lost a lot of people in that war. So it wasn't even like economically make sense. And even like thinking that they're gonna go take Erebor right now is just so crazy because everyone is fully aware of what Smaug can do. You know what I mean? It's not a matter of like, they don't think there is a way to kill him, you know, so therefore nobody has tried it. And now the question isn't like, oh, can we go take him out? It's like, some people are even wondering if Smaug is still there. Like, Thorin is like, we don't even know if Smaug is still alive. And I'm sure Gandalf is like, I'm pretty sure. But, like, so he goes, like, the sneaky route with Bilbo, you know? Somebody small and quiet who can, like, assess. But even beyond all of that nonsense, the thing that really bothers me is when Thorin says to Gandalf, this is no chance meeting, is it? And Gandalf says, no, it's not. And it's like, actually it was. that is like a big part of how like the Middle Earth works, right? Is that and I had this gripe before about Peter Jackson because as we saw in the extended edition, I think it was Return of the King, where they had Boromir, Faramir, and Denethor talking in like a flashback, and they make it out like Elrond is calling this meeting like, oh yeah, the One Ring has been found, and it's like, no, like the reason that all of those people, Legolas, Gimli, Boromir, Frodo, were all there at the same time was like happenstance, you know what I mean? They've just worked out that way because reasons, you know. And Elrond in the book even says like, you are called here but not called by me, which I think is a big deal in like the metaphysics of Middle Earth. And I just think that like it would have been so much more satisfying if it was not this like making it out like Gandalf orchestrated this. It's like, that's not how Gandalf works.
Gandalf is not that smart.
You know what I mean? Like, he just goes with what happens, you know what I mean? And so of course, like, there's all of that where it's like, it's definitely just, they just happen to be there. But then later, in my version of the appendices, it's like the other page, just because I have like the tiny one. It could be on the same page for a bigger version. But there is a point where Gandalf is talking to Gimli and Frodo when they're in Minas Tirith together after, you know, the Battle of after, I mean, pretty much Sauron is defeated at that point, but he tells about how the war was also waged in Dale, and that Dane, who we previously talked about was the one who actually killed Azog, is now the king under the mountain after Thorin, but he has fallen defending the body of King Brand, who's a descendant of Bard, before the gate of Erebor. And he says, yet things might have gone far otherwise and far worse. When you think of the great battle of the Pelennor, do not forget the battles in Dale and the valor of Durin's folk. Think of what might have been, dragonfire and savage swords in Eriador, and night in Rivendell. There might be no queen in Gondor. We might now hope to return from the victory here only to ruin and ash. But that has been averted, because I met Thorin Oakenshield one evening on the edge of Spring and Bree, a chance meeting, as we say in Middle-earth.
Yes. Isn't that, so first of all, that's all completely wild. Yeah, it's like, so the destruction of the ring and success of this war is due to Gandalf and Thorin bumping into each other. So like, that's wild. Also, it's so funny to me that it says like, you know, but let's not forget that there was also war waged in Dale. And it's like, okay, but Tolkien, you're the one that tucked that little detail away into the, you know, 100th page of the appendices after a 1,000-page book. Like, you're the one that decided, no, people are not gonna know about this.
Yeah, he's like, if you want, is there somewhere.
The slander that Tolkien does for his own race is kind of outstanding to me, where it's kind of like, do you not, Tolkien, you don't have to write dwarves if you don't want to. Like, if you think of them as the lesser people of Middle Earth, you didn't have to include them in your story. Like, no one was making you.
Poor dwarves. Yeah, I mean, Yeah, it really bothered me.
That's fair. However, it sets up a great comedic moment where Gandalf is like, or Thorin or whoever is like, you're gonna need one amazing burglar, and then cut to Bilbo.
Yeah, and,
peeking over the mountain.
And he really could have said that we're gonna need a burglar anyway, but he didn't have to say this is no chance meeting. And we didn't need Bree to be so freaking creepy.
Yeah, it did make me think. I did expect to see Aragorn in the corner.
Right. I mean, and it's a bad guy this time. No, that's Aragorn's corner now. Like,
yeah. Except for he's a 10-year-old. Yeah. Which, like, y'all will have to talk about when you get to it at the end of the last movie.
I don't want to think about that.
Are
you talking about Legolas?
Meet him. He's a child.
I hate that part. I hate
Aragorn's a literal child.
And also, Legolas doesn't do that. Like, that's not. They don't become buddies. Like, that doesn't make sense. Like,
he and his father have a complicated relationship, so he just decided to ignore him.
Yeah.
And...
yeah.
So great.
I don't even know what I'm gonna do when we get to Legolas. Honestly, just
it's honestly so bonkers. It's just
yeah.
I made a meme for like that section of the movie, and it's from Emperor's New Groove, where at the very end they're like on that chase, and then somehow Kronk and Yzma beat them, and they're like, how did you get here? And then Kronk pulls down the map and goes like, you got me, by all accounts it makes no sense. And so I made it and was like, Tauriel and Legolas, what are you doing here? And then it's like, by all accounts, I don't know. This doesn't make sense.
That's perfect. Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh.
You know what else doesn't make sense? Is that
everything.
So the previous movie ended with them like
getting
away.
I know that is literally my next note. Point? Yes, we're on the same page, MC. Because at first I started to write about how like I really do love this chapter. I think Beorn's a cool character. I think it's interesting how he's got these animal friends that he chills with, and we find out that he doesn't eat animals. He just like lives off of like clotted cream and honey. And I'm like, that's my kind of guy, you know, like that is cool. And I wrote, it's like peak whimsy, right? And I was like, but alas, Peter won't let me have it. So, also pacing red flag, right? So like,
oh right,
and we cut back to the present with Bilbo, and are they, you know, walking as we're very used to seeing group walking in Lord of the Rings, and I think they did it quite well. You know, they made it still interesting, and they're walking, and it's fine. Sometimes there's a lull. There is no lull in The Hobbit, so they get away from with the eagles, but then for some reason
they're immediately
still there.
They're
like,
always being chased in this freaking movie, man.
I'm like, how much running do you expect them to do?
And like the thing is, they didn't need didn't need that as an explanation for how they end up at Beorn's house. It could have just been them like, you know, continuing to, you know, head towards Erebor, and then Gandalf is like,
we need a break.
I think we're nearby a old friend's house or whatever, you know, like
somebody, I think he calls him like in all caps in the book. It's like somebody lives over.
Yeah,
I know. I mean, and they're like, huh? And he's like, I mean, just let Gandalf be a weirdo. Let him do it.
Or like even just let them stumble upon this house, and then Gandalf is like, I know who lives here.
Let Bilbo complain about how fucking hungry he is, because you know he wants to. Let him. They've not talked about any food. When was the last time we saw them eat? You know what I mean? They don't even eat in the movie at Beorn's house. What a waste of honey. I'm just
oh my god.
I'm so mad.
And we also got some absolutely terrible CGI bees.
Yeah. I was like, you can't make up for this, Peter, with one shitty looking bee, okay? Because I mean, how nice would it have been to, you know, you've had like this really stressful end, and then you know, cut back to our friends, and they're like walking along. Like, I think it would have been such a nice little break to have them walking and you come across all these flowers. And it's like, what is this? They look planted, you know? And then you got all these bees, and then you get to like the honey, and then, you know, like a little bit more like it is in the book about, and then Gandalf being all cryptic and silly. Because it's also like when they are running, right, and Gandalf says, okay, we're gonna go to this place, and also makes it weird because he's like, oh, he'll either help us or kill us, and Thorin's just like, okay.
They're like, sounds like a good risk to me, you know, and like
why just no need for it, right? Like, why not let Gandalf do his Gandalf thing and like take control of that precarious situation, right? And also Beorn starts chasing them. Like, we don't know it's him yet, but we know it's him, right? And he's a bear, and they shut him out of his own house,
of his own damn house.
And I'm supposed to believe that the very next day, then they can just slowly introduce themselves to him. It makes no
He's
fucking
just out
sense.
chopping wood. Like, there's not like 50
like he isn't like, what the hell are you doing in my house? You know?
Yeah.
Like, and he's still got farm animals in his house, but he doesn't talk to him, which, like, okay, I get
and
it.
They don't talk.
I was like,
back.
Where are the animals walking around on their hind legs?
Like,
I made,
on their hind feet,
but I made a note
with their forepaws.
Yeah, that was so cute. But also, like, they, in the design of the house, when they run in, there are a couple stairs, and he's got like actual cows in his adorable cows, but they're cows, and I'm like, those cows can't deal with those stairs. Why did you design this house? You know that there are animals in it, and like, it's not just flat. Everything should be low and flat. Like, okay, it's fine. But I do think that, I mean, the whole like trying to introduce themselves after they've already slept in his house is like very weird. It's like, why bother? You know, like. Like, it's at that point that they try to like go back to kind of how it is in the book, and I'm like, why even care at that point? You've already made it weird. Like, I don't even understand why Beorn wants to help them at that point. I would be like, you slept in my house. I don't even know who you are. Like, get out. I'm gonna eat all of you. And then they run away again. That seems much more like what Peter would have wanted to do. Just more running, more danger. For what? You know? And I also think that in their attempt to try to include this thing, so in the book, Gandalf, it's with him introducing the dwarves slowly to him, it's much more clever, and it piques Beorn's interest. It makes him like interested in whatever the story is, but also doesn't make them seem like they're just like asking him for free shit. And I don't know, he has like a command of the situation, but in the movie Gandalf is like very awkward and like nervous in front of Beorn, and I'm like, that is just not that's just not who Gandalf would be in that situation.
Although I did love Ian McKellen's acting of that. Like, he really portrayed that very well, his nervousness and his like,
I mean,
sort of like a side of Gandalf that we don't ever really see again, I don't think.
Well, I think that it's like, because Gandalf is supposed to be afraid with the whole like fire and wolf situation, but you know, we don't sit with that in the same way, so we don't get to see that. So then they make him like afraid of Beorn, and I'm like, I don't know. It's just weird, but maybe it's because of the horrific character design. Maybe that's what's scary. This fucking ridge of hair down. I'm just like, what is this?
How would you design a bear man then?
I think he would have hair in normal places once he turned back into a man.
Okay.
I don't want to think about it. I'm not thinking about it.
Or like give him like a real beard. Like, what is this? That's no. I don't think his acting was bad. I think that he pulled off like the whole Beorn like being like kind of gruff and like whatever thing. Growly. But yeah. But it's like I understand that like they didn't, and I think that some people will think this about like why that introducing them 2x2 thing is different. Is it like they don't want to do it like in the book, like just rehashing everything that they just watched, which like fair, but we didn't need that stupid chase scene in the beginning.
No.
Like we could have had Gandalf take the lead here, and like why not see these bees and the flowers and like how and kind of enjoy seeing a different part of Middle Earth that we haven't seen before, that has a little bit more wonder and like magic about it, right? Like a different kind. Like with the Shire, we kind of know what that vibe is, and I think this is like more of like a wild version of that. Like it's a nice place, but we don't get to enjoy it at all as the audience.
Yeah, they're there for like you're there for like 5 seconds, and then they're like, okay, have fun in Mirkwood.
Yeah, and then they still try to shoehorn in the 2x2 thing. So I'm like, why not just let Gandalf do it? Like, just rewrite some of his line. Like, also, don't do the chase scene. Let them just go to Beorn's house. Let us see his cute little ponies, and his bees and stuff, and then let him do his 2x2 thing, but just make it shorter. Like, fine, but I just think it's so weird that if they're not going to do it at the beginning, like, why do it at all?
Yeah, it's definitely frustrating. I think like most of my frustration, specifically like about this part of the movie, because like I enjoyed the chapter so much, is that going into it and being like, oh, okay, they turned this 200-page book into 3 movies. Surely they included everything from the. Surely they were trying to stretch things out from the book, and then they took one of the longer chapters from The Hobbit and shortened it to like a 2-minute scene. And I'm like, and then they, spend such ridiculous amounts of time on other stuff that is not important. Or I mean, like
running away all the time.
Yeah,
like we cut to Dol Guldur for a minute, like just because I didn't even really write anything down about that because I just don't care.
Forgot about that part.
And then yeah, it's probably also a good thing that I'm not on for the. Hey, I gotta sneeze.
Bless you.
Thank you. The fact that the Desolation of Smaug does not happen in Desolation of Smaug is absolutely like, why would you start a movie with one of the like greater climactic parts of The Hobbit? Like, why would you do that in the first 10 minutes of a movie? Like, why would that not be the climax of the Desolation of Smaug? It's just so frustrating to look at the source material and then look at what was laid out and be like, there are so many different ways that you could have done this, and so many, like, you spent way too much time on this part of the story and not enough time at all on this, and then you cut this completely and like completely change things around when you did not need to do that. Like, if you're gonna turn this into a 9-hour trilogy, that's fine, but like, do it in a way that you're giving attention to parts of the book that are important to like the essence of the story.
Yeah, agree. I agree. I'm like, at this point, like, there are so many things where I'm like, why did you even call it The Hobbit? Like, call it Thorin and Company. I don't know. Like, it's just not the same thing. Like, sure, you're like picking bits and pieces, but it's like, in the way that Lord of the Rings, I feel like, really captured the vibes, this one, it's like it doesn't know what to do with itself with these movies.
Yeah. And it's because The Hobbit is, I think Peter Jackson was trying to make The Hobbit be like Lord of the Rings and be like, it's this epic quest and blah, and it's like, no, actually it's quite silly. Like, it's very ridiculous.
Like, and let Ian McKellen do it. He could have done, I mean, all these actors could have done it. You know what I mean? They could have a silly goose time and make it believable. You know what I mean? Within the context of the story, and not make it be like, well, like, I don't know. I know that there was like studio challenges. I know with like so many things, and it just like lost control of itself. But like, I really wonder sometimes what it would have been like if like Guillermo del Toro hadn't had to walk away.
Yeah.
And now I kind of want to be like, hey, how you just did Pinocchio and it was like stop motion and cool? Like, do you want to just hop back over and Do the Hobbit.
Do the Hobbit.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, all these, you know, like plans in the works for new movies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they will, but it would be great if they like readapted the Hobbit.
Yeah, I feel like with the Hobbit, it's one of those where I'm like, you could readapt it like all the time, and I would never get tired of it. Do you know what I mean?
Although, I mean, I say that, I would only let them remake the Hobbit if they kept Martin Freeman as Bilbo, because it was just so, like the way that he, oh my god,
I love
it's
Martin
just
Freeman.
like such an A+ performance.
I know,
as
and
Bilbo,
that's what makes it even more frustrating, I think.
Yeah, like that was another meme I made of Sam and Frodo walking up, Sam carrying Frodo up the mountain, except it's Martin Freeman carrying the Hobbit trilogy. Like, just he absolutely crushed this role. And there's specifically there's a scene in the next part of the movie when they're in Mirkwood, and he's like, he almost loses the ring for a minute, and he doesn't say anything. It's just like his facial expressions, and you're like, I felt everything you were feeling and thinking in that moment, like in that like 30 seconds of just like absolutely crushes it. And you're just like, I want to follow this lovable little halfling around the world.
I know. I do. I truly do. And yeah. And that's what it's like. There are so many things that they had going for them for these movies. And then
there were a lot of really excellent, there were a lot of things they did really, really well. I mean, the casting is pretty great. I feel like they pretty much, the casting in all of the movies is really great. They did like as bad as the CG is in some parts, Smaug is absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, Smaug and Gollum look so good, and everyone else is kind of like
they blew the budget on the dragon and the gremlin, and
I love those scenes. Yeah, it's like, and that's the other thing is that it's like those are the moments where it's just Bilbo and like one other character, and it works, right? Like there's. And it gets lost whenever we're like constantly being like having to fight these fucking orcs and shit. It's just like, I'm tired. I'm only 30 minutes into the second movie and I am tired. Like, there's just so much action all the time, and we don't ever have like a break, because I feel like this would have been a really nice opener, because then we've got Gandalf piecing out in both versions to go deal with something more serious. And if you're gonna have that pick up again with like some more serious stuff, why not let us have this cute, fun moment?
Yeah, like have some moment of levity so that it really contrasts when Gandalf leaves them at the edge of like this terrifying haunted forest, you know? And then it's like, wait, no, take me back to the bears and the bees and bread and butter and honey. Like,
yeah. And like, why have Bilbo at the end of the first movie say like, I feel like the worst is behind us, only to be chased somewhere?
I mean, like, I think that is the, you know, the dramatic irony, the humor in that line is like, oh, babe. No.
But then it's just like, why not let it be true? Why not let him feel that way for longer than 5 seconds?
It is it is just really ridiculous that like the Eagles pick them up, and then what do they drop them off right at the start of where, like, do they drop them off like 1 mile ahead of where the orcs are, and then they're like, oh crap, we're being chased by them again. Like, it's really it is really ridiculous, because it's like, I thought we literally just got away from them, and at the end of the previous movie I thought we just like defeated them for now, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And yet no. And I really would have liked for us to get to know Beorn, like, whether he looks like a goof, whatever, but like, I think he's a really interesting character, like getting to know like how, you know, how he feels about things.
One of his kind.
Yeah. Well, and that's also an interesting point, because they make it out like that, but there was also a meeting with other bears that he had at night when Bilbo was trying.
Yeah, he goes to like the bear meeting in the book.
Bear meeting, and they're dancing bears. Why don't we get to see dancing bears in the firelight?
It's the Beorn is it's just so wild. It's just such a wild story in the book where like he comes back in the morning and is like, yeah, I wanted to make sure that the story you guys told me was true. So I went and tracked down the goblins and I took care of them. And also, would you like some bread and cheese? Yeah. And then they're like, what happened to the goblin? And they're like, come with me, I'll show you.
Yeah.
Let's all go out into my garden. And then like the goblin head is like on his fence post.
Right.
Like where the mailbox should
like,
be.
Beorn is like we're only supposed to be scared of him because he's a bear, but it's like, no, he is legitimately kind of scary, but if he's like on your side, then you're
exactly.
Like, woo!
And so that's why I got so much enjoyment out of Tom Bombadil, and I got so much enjoyment out of Beorn, because it's these like very powerful people who could easily just murder our main characters, but for some reason or another choose not to. And they're like, I could kill you, but instead I'm gonna welcome you into my home and we're gonna, hang out. He's
just like so amused by their story, and like he's like, and the fact that it's true, like even better.
Yeah, he's like, oh my god, that was amazing. Like so crazy.
Yeah, he's like, I never have people over, but like that was really good, you guys.
It's just like it's just this contrast of like they're hanging out, they're like the dwarves are singing a song, the animals are bringing them, bread and honey, and then Beorn's like, absolutely do not go outside. Dangerous stuff is happening out there. Do not go outside.
I know, and that's another thing is it's like I guess that's like why they have him just try to chase them into his own house, but like
was to show, be like, this is a dangerous man, but he's choosing to help them.
But it's also like, so is Beorn, because we see him later, so when he's like, sure, I'll give you some food, I'll give you some supplies, you can ride my ponies to the eaves of Mirkwood, and you gotta tell him to come back. And it's like, so we know that like when he's in bear form, maybe don't hang out with him, but then he follows them as a bear to make sure that he doesn't fuck up, his ponies. And so I think that's interesting. Like, it's not like he's like not like a completely different person when he's a bear, you know what I mean? But it is like, you can't hang out, I guess. Like, I don't know. It's really interesting.
I more interpreted it as like, I don't want you to see me doing bear stuff. Not of like I'm not going to be able to control myself, but like I'm going to be outside doing bear stuff, and I don't want you to get in the way and possibly, get hurt or to, see me like that and then be really freaked out when you see me in human form.
Yeah, that's so funny, because then it's like, because Bilbo notices, the dwarves don't, and Gandalf kind of like teases, he's like, you guys, like, he's like, you need to get it together. Bilbo has sharper eyes than you, and they're like, oh shit, okay, like, better get back these ponies.
But like, also, what a wholesome moment that he like follows them to make sure that he gets his ponies.
Literal Papa Bear. Like, I wouldn't even want to fuck with his bees, you know what I mean? I wouldn't even want to swat at him. I'd just be like, sting me, I guess.
It's just so, and also like bears, it's a real, it's a real life, actually I don't know if it's a real life thing, it's a thing that like in pop culture, in like movies and stuff, it's like, ooh, bears eat honey and stuff, and so like that's a really cute little thing for Tolkien to play off of being like, well, what if this bear man was friends with bees?
And and he like does not eat other animals, and I just think that's so, like, it's obviously real bears definitely do, but he's got something else going on where he doesn't have to.
That's so cool. It's so it's so fascinating to me. It's such a but like similar to how they cut Tom Bombadil out of the movies, I do kind of also understand why they would trim all of this down, because it is kind of like a complete break off from the story to be like, yeah, we were just being, you know, chased by goblins and wargs and we were just flying on eagles, and then now we're gonna like take a little break and have, you know,
I don't think
bread
it
and
needed to be
cheese.
like, maybe they don't have the bread and cheese, but I think that they could have walked up and it have like a very different feeling of a place.
Yeah.
And we know that Peter can do that. Like when we walk into Rohan, like the music changes, like you know, we have a very distinct sense of place whenever we move throughout Middle Earth otherwise.
Sure.
And yet Beorn doesn't get that, even though it's like, I just think it would have been so nice. Plus, especially right before we go to Mirkwood, where it's like much more stressful and dangerous.
Yeah, I think they definitely could have, you know, found a happy medium of like having like the happy, the whimsical vibes of Beorn and incorporating that into the movie. And you know, that doesn't mean that you have to spend, you know, 30 minutes at Beorn's house. You know, like you can still have it be like 10 minutes long, but like at least, you know, put in some of those story elements that were from the chapter.
Yeah. Just give us a break from these fucking orcs. It's just not, please. I know we don't get it, but, and then we go to Dol Guldur for a second and it's like, all right, I don't even
Why?
I don't even care.
Shadowy thing giving orders.
Thanks, Benedict Cumberbatch. But I mean, and then it's like, Aslak's like, oh, I gotta lead your armies, but I really wanted Thorin's head. And he's like, don't worry about it. Everybody gonna die.
Everything will die.
And so then he's like, Bolg, can you hunt down my enemy? And I just feel like the whole conflict between them is so overblown. I'm like, it is not that big deal.
I don't care at all about these like dynamics of the orcs and how they function and how they're like, if you had never shown me, like, you don't need to show the orcs planning to then explain like why they show up later in the movie, because like it's just implied that like whatever you know
around and found out
like whatever antagonists your characters are fighting against, it's just kind of implied that like they're going to keep running into them. I don't need to see the mechanics of like, how did they plan out, you know, finding them again, or how, you know, who did they assign the leadership to keep tracking them, and like I don't care about any of it.
No.
Like I never once at any point thought, I wonder what the orcs' motivations were for.
Yeah, and it's like I mean, I didn't mind.
Complicated.
I know, and I didn't mind like the whole bit with like Radagast going to Dol Guldur and being like, "Ooh, spooky shit going down." But then I'm like, I don't think we need to go back there for this, especially when you have like Beorn literally. So in the movie, we've got Beorn, you know, agreeing to help them, sure, and he's the one that brings up the sorcerer that lives at Dol Guldur, or the necromancer, as we refer to him a lot in the book. And I feel like that makes sense. Like, he lives around there. Like, he's probably been seeing some shit. I think that's fine for him to be like, you said you're a wizard. What's the dealio? And, you know, Gandalf kind of gives what Saruman has said, and he's like, okay, but what do you think? But then they get interrupted. And I think that's interesting, like, because I'm fine with movie Gandalf not realizing that it's Sauron at this point. I know that we know in the book, like, from all the other stuff we talked about, like, Gandalf in the book knows, and he's been pushing the White Council this whole time to go after Sauron, but Sauron's like, no, it's fine. So, but I'm fine with like Beorn bringing this up, because then it's like, okay, then we're kind of like we could have used this time to, like, instead of being like stressful, like, break and then pick it back up again, like, okay, Mirkwood's really spooky, Gandalf is worried, you know, not just about their little adventure, but like what else is going on in the world. I feel like that's true to Gandalf either way you spin it, you know, he's always worried about everything else, you know. And I do like that they have Bilbo ask because in the book he definitely asks like, is there no way like around this creepy ass forest? And in the book Gandalf is like, oh, I'm ashamed at you, like, and he's like, no, I'm not saying to go
kind of
back.
Yeah,
he's like, I'm not.
He's like, if you want to, like, if you guys want to succeed in your quest at all, then yeah, you have to go through it. And he's like, I just meant if there was another way around the, like, literally, is there another way?
Right, yeah.
Like
don't read into that too much, sir.
Unnecessary. You're abandoning us.
Yeah.
I don't need your sass,
Yeah,
you know?
he's like, I'm just, I'm stressed. And Gandalf in both versions essentially responds like, you either gotta go 200 miles north out of your way or twice that south. And in the movie with this, he's like looking around the entrance of Mirkwood, and he's obviously thinking about Dol Guldur, and he even hears Galadriel. And at first it's kind of like stuff we've heard Galadriel say before, but then she tells him to go to the tombs in the north, where the Witch King is supposedly buried. And we've also talked about this before, that that is also kind of an asinine idea, because like there's no body to bury for the Witch King.
True, yeah.
How? And on what are you imagining happened the last time you fought him with like the whole Angmar stuff in Eriador? Like, he just goes away. It doesn't die.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, there's no. Yeah, it's not that's so true. I never thought about that, of like there weren't like literal tombs for them to, bury. Also, why would you bury a Nazgul? I would be like, no, we're putting that thing
setting it on fire.
Yeah,
we're burning that shit to the ground.
Yeah, we're gonna make sure there's nothing left. But the thing is, there's already nothing left because he's a Nazgul. Like that's how the ring works for them. And
it is so it's so dumb that Gandalf is like, did you get this impression that like he was planning to go with them through the forest until he gets the little whispering?
He says, don't go into Erebor without me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You're supposed to be like, bye, suckers, and go do your thing. Like, yeah, he was very much like, oh, I am concerned
actually
now. So
I changed my mind.
Yeah,
something's come up. I have to go.
Yeah,
and they're like, what?
Like, he just got an urgent text message from Galadriel, and he's gotta go. like
really?
Yeah. But they do this in Fellowship too. They make it out like Gandalf is gonna meet Frodo at Bree, but then he misses it, But Gandalf was never gonna meet Frodo at Bree. He was just like, go that way, make your way to Rivendell. You know what I mean? Like, it was always gonna be Rivendell. It wasn't gonna be Bree. But Peter loves to make it out like Gandalf is along for the whole ride, but he's a busy man. He's got other stuff on his to-do list. And I do like in the book how he gives Bilbo like his vote of confidence. He's like, you've got Bilbo here, you'll be fine.
It's so funny.
I love it.
It's like there are so many notes of like, the dwarves looked visibly distressed at the news that Gandalf was leaving them, and then it's like, hey, don't worry, you also have Bilbo, and then it's like they looked even more distressed. And it's like it's so mean. They're so mean to Bilbo. Like, even is this halfway? No, we're not like halfway into the book yet, are we? But like, it's pretty far into the story, and they're still so mean to him.
I know. he has to prove himself a lot to these guys.
Yeah, that's another thing. Is like okay, never mind. I'm just gonna be going into more rants.
It's okay.
About, like,
do it.
Man,
I dare you.
Well, it's just like it does kind of feel like Bilbo constantly having to prove himself and be like, see, I can hang, I'm cool, and then like they immediately forget about that 5 seconds later, and they're like, ugh, the Hobbit's still here, and it's like, did I not just have like this whole heroic moment where I stood up and saved Thorin? Like,
by the end of this, Bilbo has to be like the parent with like a bunch of kids. Right? Mm-hmm. Like, when he gets them to Erebor finally, like, I mean, not only does he help them escape from Thranduil's cave thingy, I don't even know if you want to call it, like, I don't even know what you want to call that. Castle? Not really. I don't know. Realm.
Yeah.
He gets them out of there, and you know, helps them in so many ways, right? And then by the time they get to the door, where they're looking for, with the, you know, the secret entrance to the side of the mountain, and then Bilbo's like, "This is your thing. How do you not know how to find your own door?" And they're like, "Well, what do you think we're supposed?" Like they start going to Bilbo, like, "How are we supposed to do this? What are we supposed to do now?" And Bilbo's like, "This isn't even my thing."
It's like, I was brought along. I don't know what's happening.
And even with like the whole
Gandalf isn't here.
Yeah, like, but he steps up every time. He's like, "I gotta do like." You know, and it just never becomes like the dwarves appreciating him so much as just like they accept that he is going to help them because Bilbo can't help himself. You know what I mean?
It's giving being the person in your group project to do the most work.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, I mean, even when it becomes the time with like Thorin kind of losing it and obsessing over the Arkenstone, and Bilbo is like, "I'm just gonna give it to those guys."
They're all like, "Hey, Bilbo, you want to go talk to him?" And he's like, "No,
yeah,
he's evil right now."
I mean, you know, like that, making that choice, like taking his toy away. I mean, he's giving dad vibes, you know, like, no, you are gonna listen to these guys, and I'm gonna take your shiny thing because you're being a jerk. Poor Bilbo. But that's the other thing, that like with the whole taking Bilbo out of like the center of the story, all of with like the movie, all of that, it just doesn't hit as hard.
It's not, with it not being centered around Bilbo, and he's kind of like a side character almost in his own story. Yeah.
It depresses me.
Yeah. Just another like wonderful like bit of humor is the amount of times that Gandalf and Beorn say in this chapter, "Don't go off the path."
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like, you don't even have to read the next chapter to know that they're going to go off the path, you know? Like, they're giving them really explicit instructions.
Yes.
And they, like, it's literally, Gandalf is literally, like, walking away, waving to them, saying, "And remember, don't go off the path." And then, like, events transpire and they go off the path.
Oh yeah.
Like,
yep. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I was reminded, I say this all the time. I say make good choices, and I'm specifically quoting Freaky Friday, and it's when Jamie Lee Curtis is dropping off Lindsay Lohan, like her daughter, and she goes, "Make good choices," and that's like what Gandalf is telling the dwarves,
literally,
and Bilbo. He's like, "Make good choices."
Like, not even a joke.
Like narrator voice. They did not make good choices.
Yeah, I mean they get so fucking grumpy in Mirkwood.
They're so mad at each other, and I'm like, this isn't helping anything.
So great.
That's the power of Mirkwood.
I know. Yeah, I mean with Bilbo asking about how they can get around, and of course, like in the movie, like we just talked about, Gandalf is like, he doesn't like explain anything. But what I do like is in the book, you know, we don't talk about the necromancer. Like, he is just a throwaway. Like, it's a problem, you know. But he does tell Bilbo, he's like, okay, like if you go north, you got an orc problem. If you go south, you are way too close to Dol Guldur, and you just, he's like, I don't even have to tell you how bad that is. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, this is something that even Bilbo is somewhat familiar with. And I realized when I was like flipping through my notes and everything that like just a couple pages before, Gandalf has already like emphasized that he has business in the south. And then it's not until this point that he says, oh yeah, the necromancer's in the south and it's not a good deal. I'm like, but nobody is like, oh,
are you? Yeah, no one's really connecting. Yeah, the dots. They're just kind of like, okay, wow, what a weird thing that you're also going to attend to business in the south. Like,
I know. I'm like, he's all very cryptic about it, but then I'm like, hey, wait a minute.
And again, it's like, when he was writing this, did Tolkien be like, yeah, and then he goes off and fights the Dark Lord Sauron? Or was he like, nah, he needed a break?
Yeah. Honestly, I don't blame him.
Do you
These
think...
guys are a handful.
So before Tolkien wrote anything else, he writes The Hobbit. Do you think he was just like, yeah, and then Gandalf lies to them and says, I have business to attend to, and leaves them to deal with everything on their own? Or do you think he genuinely was like, no, and Gandalf has business to attend to that I will fill in the gaps later?
Yeah. I feel like
or was he...
it's interesting to think about Gandalf, Hobbit version of Gandalf, right? Because he is a silly goose. Like, we talked about how, like, this is red wine Gandalf and not tea, just tea. Thank you, Gandalf, anymore.
Right, yeah.
And he's always down for, like, his smoke rings and stuff. But it's also interesting, like, in the previous chapter with Out of the Frying Pan, he was literally psyching himself up to die to save the dwarves with, like, jumping out of the tree with like a thunderbolt kind of situation. And it hints that, I mean, Tolkien, the narrator, says that he would not have made it, but he would have taken some orcs and stuff out with him. So it's like he is much more reckless, I feel like. And he reckless in Fellowship with, like, the whole Moria thing and Aragorn being like, dude, don't go in there. And Gandalf's like, it's fine. Like, I think there is this, but this is kind of, like, impromptu, like, reckless streak about Gandalf. And I feel like thinking about all of that and then him having to go deal with something, I bet I'm sure that he did imagine Gandalf going on, like, whether it was the necromancer in fact or not. I feel like he probably was like, this was my vacay and now I have to go do wizard stuff.
Yeah.
But it is kind of interesting to think about, like, at the inception, was it the necromancer? I mean, maybe it was, but would it have been more of, like, an actual battle or like a duel situation? And it's funny because, like, if we do think of it in context of the White Council, and Gandalf iterates in this chapter how he's already late, and I'm like, how do you, like, are they waiting for you somewhere? Like, there's no texting. Like, does Gwaihir go tell Galadriel that you're running a few days behind? Like, how does that work? How do you plan to evict a sorcerer from a fortress in a creepy forest? Like, where do you meet? Like, just outside, or Lothlorien? Is that where we meet up before we go? I don't know. This is where my brain goes when prompted. Just send a quick text. I mean, I know that they're implying. I mean, we know that Galadriel and Gandalf, like, can just.
Now we know we know what we know now.
Yeah.
Don't forget about the moth system, though.
Of course.
Right, the moth system, right?
Can you imagine him being like, and then, like, a hawk or something comes and it's just like,
no.
Like, the moth system has flaws.
I know, yeah.
It's got flaws. I know it's worked for a little bit, but it's got some holes in there. So yeah. I'm interested to see, like, because I don't truly remember. Like, I know, like, we're gonna get more Elrond and Galadriel and Christopher Lee Saruman for the Dol Guldur stuff. I don't remember how they exactly make it play out.
Oh man, I remember it vividly.
Oh great.
There's this just one image I have of it. It's Galadriel and she turns into
the ring,
Samara. From the ring. Like, she legitimately, it looks like they copy and pasted it onto.
I don't understand that.
Cate Blanchett.
That's so upsetting.
Yeah. Yep.
I do vaguely remember that she walks into Dol Guldur without wearing any shoes.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
and then
she's
she
shoeless.
just like deadlifts Gandalf.
Yeah.
Planky Gandalf, though. Gandalf is planking.
Oh my god, it's like quite
I'm already
a
tired.
thing.
Just thinking about it. Because
Well, that's not until
not for now.
the next movie.
Yeah.
So
But I am sad that we don't get more bees and honey in this.
yeah,
I could have
yeah.
gone for that.
Talking animals. Yeah.
Yeah, they refuse to let animals talk in these movies. Like, you know,
He's like, no, these are very distinguished films.
Yeah,
And meanwhile,
it's
in the
very
book,
serious.
it's like,
Too silly.
but I'm still,
Oh my
I
God.
truly feel a little bit traumatized by the dwarves being naked in that fountain in
You
Riverdale.
mention it every episode.
It's
I'm
upsetting.
really worried about you, Andy.
I wasn't there.
uh,
You know what I mean? Like, we're trying to be like we have these moments of like it's almost too silly, and then it has to be like so serious the rest of the time. I'm like, no, stop, please, don't do this. Like, I don't know. It's all over the place, and this was just sometimes I feel like there have been other sections of a movie with more redeeming moments. This one, I was just kind of bored, low key, with like the movie because I really like this chapter. I think it's really interesting and fun, but I was just kind of like, I don't need it, you know?
yeah, it's eventually it just kind of came to a point watching the movie where it's like, why include this at all?
Yeah.
If you're going to, if you're not going to, hit the beats that the book hits with this chapter, and if you're just gonna like rush through it, then like just skip it, just cut it out entirely, like
make it your
have
town.
them be being chased into Mirkwood or something, if that's what you want to do. Supposedly there's a lot more of Beorn in the extended edition of this movie, which I have not seen. So
Okay.
that's just all conjecture
That's
that I
what
hear.
we're watching, so we'll see. I've never watched.
Oh, you're watch.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay, then
We're watching the
never mind.
extendeds, but I've never watched them before. So yeah, there's just moments where I'm like, what? I'm like, what is this? So we'll see. I guess, if he goes
So then,
on.
so then, based on what you were talking about, then there really isn't that much, because I just was going off of the theatrical edition,
Yeah,
which is just like absurd.
I know.
So
Yeah, I mean, it's like I kind of regret doing the extended because then there's more, but also I had such a fucking fight with so many people about extended versus theatrical when I was doing Lord of the Rings movies, and so many people got all uppity because I watched the theatrical and I was covering the theatrical, and I did have separate episodes on the extended editions, but people were still like, it's either extended or nothing. And I was just like, no, it's not, because like if it's extended or nothing, then they would have released that version into theaters. Like that is not the version that won the Oscars, Right. I mean, low key, like, there are things that are like, as far as a movie experience, that are better about the theatrical. Like, I saw the theatrical ones recently when I went to that concert thing at Radio City, and I was like, oh, I mean, this is nice. Like, this is a pretty good movie.
Yeah, like, it's not like people really make it out to be like, oh, well, everything that they cut from the extended editions ruins the movies. And I'm like, no, not really. And so I just had
nice things that they include, but that's like, there's some things where I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
So I just, when it got time to cover the Hobbit movies, I just had no desire to rehash that same argument. And so I was like, I'll watch the theatrical editions, and if I'm like really enjoying it, then I'll maybe go into the extended editions. And guess what? I really was not enjoying it. So I did not do the extended editions.
I think the reason, so I mean, obviously we did for the purposes of like a book like chapter by chapter comparison, like what we're doing, like for Lord of the Rings, I knew like Mouth of Sauron is a great example, I think, because
oh my god,
it's a good,
that is one part from the extended editions that it's like,
that's
whoa,
a really good scene, and it's like it's kind of interesting that that's like totally not there, and like
I think I came to the conclusion, I'm like, they just had to have cut that part because he straight up decapitates him, you know, and that must have been, they must have had to cut it for rating purposes. I bet
probably.
they, and same with how Saruman dies at the beginning of Return of the King in the extended edition, which was cut from
more
the
Christopher Lee
theatrical edition as well.
Yeah,
like those are very cool scenes, but I feel like if they had been included in the theatrical cut, it would have had to be R.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but for our purposes, like we obviously want to talk about Mouth of Sauron, and he's there, but he's not, you know, so like
you want to look at everything that's being presented.
Yeah, so I guess that's kind of the same philosophy with this, but it's also like why is there so much Hobbit movie? Because like sometimes it is fun, like I really like getting into the appendices. I think that's like some interesting tidbits back there, like when we were talking about the war with the dwarves and the orcs in the Battle of Moria the first time it was mentioned. I was like, you know, at first when that scene is just presented in the movie, I'm like, wow, why is there suddenly this crazy battle with like so many people? And it's like, no, I mean, it really was like a ton of people at the battle and that died and fought. So I was like, okay, I'll give that one to you, Peter, you know what I mean? And but then but there's like the Dol Guldur stuff, it's like they're kind of, now that's like really stretched because there's not a lot of information about how that.
There are ways to tell this story and there are ways to not. And this was not the preferred way of telling it, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah. It's just, and it's so sad. And I know that a lot of people really do enjoy them, and I think that's wonderful. They obviously weren't made for me specifically. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, that's all right. I missed that boat because I just wanted them to be something else, and I love Bilbo so much that I really wanted him to be, you know, at the center of all of this, and obviously that is not the route that they chose to go down. And you know, it is what it is, and they're fun to just like have on, but it is like, I mean, it's tough. It's tough. I'll admit it. I've admitted it every time. But I'm trying to think of if there's anything else that we wanted to talk about. But I mean, basically this one ends the same way that the chapter ends, where I stopped it, as far as like them plunging into the forest, and then that's like the last line of that chapter. So we're gonna get to see flies and spiders next time, which is full on Mirkwood, which I think will be fun. Callie, MC, is there any other moments of here or any silver linings that I missed? Help.
I don't think so, because this is definitely, like I said, it's one of my favorite chapters from The Hobbit, and so I was just like really disappointed to see that they had completely annihilated it when they were adapting it into the movie. So I can't even say like, oh well, at least they included this part from the chapter, or at least they did this, or at least they did that, because they didn't. So
yeah,
it was just like bummer all around. I think the only thing I really love about like the opening part of this movie, you know, the first like 30 minutes or so, it is that setup for, you know, Gandalf saying like, well, we're going to need to find a burglar, and then cut to Bilbo, and it's like, ha, isn't that funny? Because like that's what they came up with, Bilbo.
Yeah.
And I would say that's the silver lining for me.
Fair. Yeah, I do think, I was like, I knew they were gonna do that. Like, I didn't even remember that opening, and I was like, as soon as they made it about stealing the Arkenstone, I was like, all right.
Instead of like, hey, maybe let's find a way to defeat this dragon so that Sauron can't use it. And And then they could have gone into, well, we're gonna need a burglar,
Right.
and then, you know, whatever. It doesn't have to. Yeah,
That's
I think
poor Arkenstone.
they really chose to focus on like the wrong thing of Erebor.
Yeah, I mean, the whole narrative around them needing a home, you know, and wanting to go back, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like this, I mean, sure, whatever, okay, fine. But it's like, this is a money deal. Let's just be clear. They're like,
it
that
really,
dragon is sitting on top of all my family's money, and I want it.
it really comes across like that, yeah.
You know, I guess that's, I mean, maybe audiences at a movie theater don't want to see that, don't want to just see, like, and sure, so, like, fine, but then when it's like you're giving this Arkenstone, like, it's like, so there's just so much going on, you know, and it's just a lot, and I'm tired.
Well, don't get too tired because you just started this movie.
I know. This is why we do it every 2 weeks instead of every week this time around.
Yeah. That's fair.
Callie, I feel like I need you to tell you. You said you were unapologetically positive for this. I need it right now.
Yeah. So, all right. Let me think. So, no, Bjorn was my favorite. Was my favorite chapter. I enjoyed the rereading of it again immensely. I was very sad that there were no talking animals in the movie, but we shan't have talking animals in the movie.
Yeah.
Part of what but the movie did do really well was in the storytelling when Gandalf is starting off with, "Oh, my companion and I, oh, our little group," but Bjorn is sharp and he is catching on to all of those details, and he's like, "Do you call 3 a group? Do you call 6 a troop? Do you call 12, a company?" Mm-hmm. And so, like, I really liked that they did mimic that in the movies, because it does show that Bjorn's not just like some sort of sleepy animalistic bear man, but he's sharp, like he's with it, and he's like listening to that story, and he's catching on, and so I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I do think that I did not look up the actor's name, but who was playing Beorn, like I think they did a really good job. Like, that was as far as like capturing he's like gruff and like not super friendly, but he's smart, and he's even like throwing in that line about like he doesn't think that dwarves care about anybody that they see as lesser than themselves, like I think that's maybe a little harsh, but it does show like Beorn and how he's got this connection to his little animals. I kind of wish we could have seen him interact more, even if they aren't going to talk, like rather than just him holding the mouse. Like, we've got all these
holding the mouse.
Yeah. He's got his ponies, he's got his cows, there's goats, like everybody's just chilling. So I think that could have been nice and even if it's not like a pat on the head or something, like how would another animal like how would you treat them as equals? You know what I mean? And not like your pet. I don't know. There's so many opportunities in this scene for like some interesting storytelling moments. But I think Beorn did do a good job. I think the way that he delivers his lines and everything is like, I don't think that there's anything really about him besides like, and maybe my like character design wise, but like the way that he acts and stuff, like it's pretty on point.
Yeah.
So that's something nice. And obviously, like, I mean, truly, when I rewatched these during the pandemic, the theatrical versions, I was like, I do not like what is happening, but I do like watching Ian McKellen and Martin Freeman, whatever they're doing. I don't even care if it's like nonsense. I just like them. I'm just like, yeah, get it, Gandalf, get it, Bilbo. So they're a delight. I think it's interesting how they like have started to sprinkle in these moments of like Bilbo messing with the ring, because he doesn't say that in here ever. Not really. I mean, he will later, but like at this point he doesn't really talk about that. But I think it's probably important for them to kind of nod to him wanting
because when he was originally writing The Hobbit, he was like, oh yeah, it's just a silly ring.
Mm-hmm.
And then later he's like, never mind.
Yeah.
It's actually the worst possible thing that he could have found. So
Actually very important.
obviously that's what, how the perks of like creating a Hobbit adaptation after everything else has been written is that you can take that information and, sprinkle it in, even though The Hobbit is not about like the ring taking over Bilbo's, tendencies and stuff. You can still, like sprinkle it in there for, foreshadowing and set things up. Yeah.
I know that we know that Bilbo keeps a hold of this ring for a really long time before giving it to Frodo, but it's just like fascinating to me that he always just has it loose in his pocket.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
Just like, wow,
really funny.
I would have lost this thing a long time ago. Like,
yeah,
good for you.
Actually, that reminds me. There's a TikTok idea I keep meaning to make. So of just like if I had the ring, and it's just like repeated video clips of me dropping it based on the amount of times that I drop my phone.
Yeah.
Like, if I had the ring, it would be like, this is broken, and it's like, we didn't need to take it to Mordor. Just give it to Mary Clay, and she'll just like accidentally drop it a million times every day, and it'll just break eventually.
It would just like
Problem
roll
solved.
under somewhere. You'd be like, I can't get to it. I don't. I mean, yeah, I have lost a lot of things. There's like so many things in this apartment where I'm like, I know I set that down somewhere, but where is it now? Yeah, like my new glasses that I bought. I bought the exact same glasses. Oh. I don't know where I put them.
Oh no!
All I remember is putting them in my backpack after picking them up. Because like I tried them on and I was like, ooh, these are maybe too good, so I'll try them on this weekend and like wear them around the house before I have to do anything. And I put them in my backpack, and now I don't know where they are.
Yeah, that happens. It happens.
They're in this house though, for sure.
That's always comforting. Yeah, to be like, I know it's in here some. Okay, for example, when I was moving into this apartment, I had a set of salt and pepper shakers that are squirrels.
Oh.
And they're just from the dollar store. Which I was given at a Hobbit themed party, and the birthday person wrapped up Mathams to give to people.
Oh, that's so funny.
And mine was these squirrel salt and pepper shakers from the dollar store. Anyway, and so I like packed them up, and I'm unpacking everything, and I'm like, I only have one. Where did this other I wouldn't have just packed up one of the squirrels. And so I'm like, where is this other squirrel shaker? It has to be like, I've been in here now since July.
Yeah.
And I have not come across it. But I feel like I will find it when I'm packing up to move out of here again.
That's how
it's got to be around here somewhere. I don't know where.
I know.
Because I wouldn't have packed up just one of them.
Right. You would have been like, where's...
It's so odd.
Yeah. Well, I think that just confirms that we could never have any of the Rings of Power. I'd be like, oh yeah, that. I put it somewhere safe. For sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where though.
Like, oh,
is that gonna be
you wanted that back? Yeah. I'm sorry. You should have told me that before.
I'm sure that it is safe. Does that comfort you? No, you need me to find it now. Oh, I can't help you, Gandalf. I'm sorry. It's okay. Callie, you know where all your rings and trinkets are.
I was just like, I'm just going to be quiet during this discussion because
1 out of 3 ain't bad.
It's okay.
I'm really quite good with all my stuff, and I know where everything is all the time.
I feel like
there's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah,
it's just about being a responsible human being.
No, I think that's great. At least one of us here is
good for you. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. It's just like those things, if I don't use it that much, or, yikes. Anyway, well, I think that is definitely all that we can say about Queer Lodgings and the first 30
Rip.
minutes of...
Rest in peace.
Yeah. We have made our feelings abundantly clear.
Yeah. I think, it's better luck next time. Maybe.
Yeah, with that, oh shoot! I was gonna say, yeah, maybe people just go watch the animated Hobbit from the 70s instead.
Yeah.
But they also cut out Queer Lodgings in that movie.
Can't win.
I just got sad all over
Fair,
again
can't win.
remembering that. Okay, well.
But we always
This
have
was fun.
the book. He's there with all his bee friends in the book, so
Yeah.
if you have not read it, I highly recommend the book for this chapter. And of course, next time we'll be diving into Mirkwood with Flies and Spiders. Before we let you go, MC, I just want to give you this chance to remind people how to find you on the interwebs, and of course to subscribe to That's What I'm Talking About.
Woo! When do you know yet when this will be coming out?
Months.
Okay. So there's a good chance that by the time this episode has come out, I'm actually no longer making That's What I'm Talking About.
Really? Well, if they haven't, they can if they haven't.
But yeah, you can still
So much to catch up on.
Yeah, you
So
can
many.
still go back and listen to everything, but I will have a new project coming up later this year, probably launching in the fall, and that's about like all I can speak to it at this point because
Woo!
and it's not like, ooh, she's keeping secrets. It's like, no, I just need to plan it. that's it.
That's fair.
We're like, I've now shared just about every piece of information that
I love it.
know. So everyone, we all know the same thing now. So yeah, I'm pretty much wrapped up my journey with Tolkien, and I will be coming back to That's What I'm Talking About whenever there are new seasons of Rings of Power.
Or of the Rohirrim, perchance.
Oh my gosh, yes. I am actually really excited about
Me
that
too.
movie because
Me too.
I just recently read the appendices, and then that's where, you read the history of Rohan, then it's like, oh my god, there was this king named Helm Hammerhand, and he punched a guy to death.
I know.
Like,
it's wild.
what?
I know. I hope
He's
they're
so
prepared.
metal.
I hope
He's so metal.
I know. I hope that with the the anime style that they're going for, that they'll really like go for it. Like don't.
I'm kind of like, I'm fascinated to see what they're going to do because I think it's also fine being like, yeah, there are like these little points in like Rohan history that we're going to use to like create a larger narrative, So I'm interested to see what that'll turn out to be. I'm interested to see what all these other, movies will be that they're talking about making. So my like journey with Tolkien is never going to come to an end, I think.
Right.
But it has for now.
That's
but
so if you
yeah,
have
I'll be
not
setting...
listened yet, where
so you can
they go?
Right, I didn't even say anything about that. Yeah, you can listen to That's What I'm Talking About wherever you get podcasts, Apple and Spotify, all that jazz. And you can follow the podcast on social media at Tolkien About Pod.
And MC, do you want people to follow you as a...
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can also follow me on Twitter at MC What's Up and on Instagram at MC Turn Down for What. Oh, and I'm also on TikTok at MC... Wait, what? At MC What's Up.
Perfect.
All right, MC What's Up.
Too many handles.
I know.
I'm ready to go off the internet for a while.
I totally get it. I mean, it's great when it's great when it's great, and it's not when it's not. But our listeners, I think, are pretty cool people. Whenever they
you are all amazing.
Yeah. So if they find you, I think you'll have a good time.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So be sure to go follow MC on all those places. If you don't already follow us, that's upsetting. We're on Twitter and Instagram. You can just search Tolkien with Friends. On Twitter, it's just Tolkien Friends because the width didn't fit. And you can also support us on Patreon. There are no tiers. It's just pay whatever you want, even as little as $1, $5, whatever you can contribute, and then you get access to episodes early. Sometimes you definitely get my horrible handwritten notes that you can decipher all on your own. We'll do occasional live streams, Q&As, and just hang out. So follow us over there as well. It's just patreon.com/TolkienWithFriends. Thanks again to MC and Callie for being here and struggling along with me with these Hobbit movies, and we will see you very soon.